Jack London, A Day's Lodging. It was the gosh dangest stampede I've ever seen. A thousand dog teams hitting the ice. You couldn't see them for smoke. Two white men and a Swede froze to death that night, and there was a dozen busted their lungs. But didn't I see with my own eyes the bottom of the waterhole? It was yellow with gold like a mustard plaster. That's why I staked the Yukon for a minion claim. That's what made the stampede. And then there was nothing to eat. That's what I said, nothing to eat. And I ain't got over guessing yet, narrative or shorty. John Messner clung with mittened hand to the bucking gee-pole and held the sled in the trail. With the other mittened hand he rubbed his cheeks and nose. He rubbed his cheeks and nose every little while. In point of fact, he rarely ceased from rubbing them, and sometimes, as their numbness increased, he rubbed fiercely. His forehead was covered by the visor of his fur cap, the flaps of which went over his ears. The rest of his face was protected by a thick beard, golden brown under its coating of frost. Behind him churned a heavily loaded Yukon sled, and before him toiled a string of 5 dogs. The rope by which they dragged the sled rubbed against the side of Messner's leg. When the dog swung on a bend in the trail, he stepped over the rope. There were many bends, and he was compelled to step over it often. Sometimes he tripped on the rope or stumbled, and at all times he was awkward, betraying a weariness so great that the sled now and again ran upon his heels. When he came to a straight piece of trail where the sled could get along for a moment without guidance, he let go the gee-pole and baited his right hand sharply upon the hard wood. He found it difficult to keep up the circulation in that hand, but while he pounded the one hand, he never ceased from rubbing his nose and cheeks with the other. "It's too cold to travel anyway," he said. He spoke aloud, after the manner of men who are much by themselves. "Only a fool would travel at such a temperature. If it isn't 80 below, it's because it's 79. He pulled out his watch and, after some fumbling, got it back into the breast pocket of his thick woolen jacket. Then he surveyed the heavens and ran his eye along the white skyline to the south. 12 o'clock, he mumbled. A clear sky and no sun. He plodded on silently for 10 minutes, and then, as though there had been no lapse in his speech, he added, "And no ground covered, and it's too cold to travel." Suddenly he yelled, "Wow!" at the dogs and stopped. He seemed in wild panic over his right hand and proceeded to hammer it furiously against the gee-pole. "You poor devils!" he addressed the dogs, which had dropped down heavily on the ice to rest. His was a broken, jerky utterance caused by the violence with which he hammered his numb hand upon the wood. "What have you done, anyway?" that a two-legged other animal should come along, break you to harness, curb all your natural proclivities, and make safe beasts out of you. He rubbed his nose not reflectively but savagely in order to drive the blood into it, and urged the dogs to their work again. He travelled on the frozen surface of a great river. Behind him it stretched away in a mighty curve of many miles, losing itself in a fantastic jumble of mountains, snow-covered and silent. Ahead of him the river split into many channels to accommodate the freight of islands it carried on its breast. These islands were silent and white. No animals, no humming insects broke the silence. No birds flew in the chill air. There was no sound of man, no mark of the handiwork of man. The world slept, and it was like the sleep of death. John Messner seemed succumbing to the apathy of it all. The frost was benumbing his spirit. He plodded on with bowed head, unobservant, mechanically rubbing nose and cheeks, and beating his steering hand against the gee-pole in the straight trail stretches. But the dogs were observant, and suddenly they stopped, turning their heads and looking back at their master out of eyes that were wistful and questioning. Their eyelashes were frosted white, as were their muscles, and they had all the seeming of decrepit old age, what of the frost rime and exhaustion.